Welcome, CAS-CIAC delegates, to the third annual President Symposium. Order, order, symposium stands at order. Good morning, everyone. I'm Emily Laput from Woodland Regional High School, your state president, and I'm so grateful to have you here. We will begin the opening ceremonies. Will the parliamentarian Aaron Dalton lead us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? Will all attendees rise and join me as we say the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now have a roll call of schools. When your school is called, will the student president or a designee answer present? I'm going to call the roll of schools. Notre Dame of West Haven.
Here from Notre Dame.
Woodland High School. Present. Conard High School.
Present.
Ansonia High School.
Present.
Northwest Catholic. East Hartford. North Haven.
North Haven, we're here.
Bacon Academy.
Present.
Kennedy High School. Conard High School.
Present.
Present.
Thank you. This is just a reminder to please respect all the speakers, keep your cameras on and your mics muted when you're asked to participate. Also,
Be
please spread
fun.
kindness, not
Here
hate
you go.
in the chat,
Introduce yourselves.
and share photos or any personal information. Before we get started, could you please snap a picture or selfie of your SCG members at this conference and tag us at #CAS on social media. SCG is just Student Council of Government. And before we begin our program, we will have a quick icebreaker led by Jeff Rosberg. And first, before we do that, we will begin today's with a few words from our Executive Director, Mr. Tomlin.
Thank you, Emily. Good morning, CAS-CIAC advisors and delegates. My name is Christopher Tomlin, Executive Director of CAS-CIAC. It's my privilege to welcome you to our third annual President Symposium. President Symposium is about learning about CAS-CIAC and the exciting program your state officers have been working on since last year's convention. You'll hear today about statewide service projects, district meetings, bringing together councils and student government in the 3 districts that are set across the state. You'll hear about a CAS-CIAC logo competition that we're really excited about. You'll hear about legislation at the state capitol that affects the students of the state and how your voice can be heard. We introduce our award program that'll recognize all the hard work you guys do day to day, year after year through pandemic and normal times. We're also introducing a keynote speaker this year, and we have an amazing keynote for this year. Yale College Council President, Ms. Bayan Galal, and you'll have an opportunity to dialogue with her. To say the last year and a half have been challenging is perhaps an understatement, but we've found ways to come together and discover new ways to succeed and communicate. I think this event is a perfect study of the past 3 years and the challenges and growth that we've faced as advisors, as student leaders, as student councils, student governments, and as a state. First year we held this was back in 2019. Presidents and their advisors dressed in business attire gathered in Cheshire at CAS for 3 hours, complete with large sessions, small sessions. We had an election and a meal worthy of presidents. If any of you there, you definitely remember the good food we had. We were just beginning our CAS journey, then COVID hit. And our spring convention was the first event shut down in the state of Connecticut as Connecticut went into lockdown. 2020, we brought this event back, and it was actually our first virtual event that CAS held. We held it in the evening. We had every technological problem known to exist. If it could go wrong, it did go wrong. From servers crashing to connections being lost to breakout rooms not working, it was a disaster. We picked ourselves up and went on to host a highly successful virtual state convention attended by delegates from 17 schools across Connecticut. We elected a full slate of officers. We then held our virtual Adventures in Leadership, and we launched CAS Academy, our virtual officer training program over the summer. So here we are in 2021, still virtual, hopefully a little bit wiser. So we celebrate the beginning of a new year, one that hopefully ends with us live in a convention together. Hopefully we are able to get there this year. Throughout this morning, get excited. Please ask questions. This should not be a passive activity. Your officers have been working very hard over the summer with all these programs. They're going to talk to you about them, and then get involved, say something. If you think about it, definitely talk about it. This is an open opportunity for us to have a conversation with each other about CAS and what CAS can do for you. I want to end my part this morning by sharing the mission statement. This is something we also worked on extensively this summer. I think the entire board is very proud of what we were able to put together. So the mission statement of CAS: through embracing CT Rises, Connecticut Association of Student Councils aims to foster collaboration and innovation amongst student leaders and advisors, provide student council governments with important resources that transcend the classroom, focus on essential skills for leadership that positively impact communities. Thank you. Have a great year. And now turn it over to CAS Student Workshops Coordinator, Jeff Rosberg, who will lead us in an opening icebreaker.
Thank you, Mr. Talon, and hello, everyone. I will now be leading you on an icebreaker I call Photo Story. In this icebreaker, everyone will look through their phones to find a photo, or think of a photo if you don't have your phone with you, so that we could share them with the group. You should be in the photo, and it should best exemplify who you are as a person. In breakout rooms of groups of 5, you will quickly find a photo and have 5 minutes to share the stories of your photos to give others an understanding of yourself. Mr. Tomlin, when you're ready.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about CAS. So CAS stands for the Connecticut Association of Student Councils. It's our mission to foster collaboration and innovation among student leaders and advisors. We provide student council governments with important resources and transcend the classroom and focus on essential skills for leadership and positively impact communities. We hope to accomplish this through embracing the acronym CT Rises, which stands for the pillars of citizenship, recognition, inspiration, service, engagement, and spirit. We have so many exciting plans for this year to help us fulfill our mission, and I'm going to speak on the goals we set for this year. And later, my fellow board members will talk about some projects we have planned and let you know how you can get involved. Some of our SMART goals for this year are to establish a better collaboration with student councils all over Connecticut by providing more leadership or position training through the year, constant district meetings and mascots for each district. We would like to see about 80% of Connecticut student councils at these events, possibly have each district mascot have something pertaining to the Connecticut culture, to propose one legislation to Connecticut government, pressing the matter on mental health, which is our state initiative, but also open on other ideas. For instance, we have drafted a legislation to present to the Connecticut government to extend the minimum required lunchtime to allow students to have more time relaxing and spending time with friends. By November 1st, 2021, we hope to develop a 10-question mental health survey to be sent to all high school students in Connecticut, and we'd like to gather 15 active schools, 5 for each district. And additionally, as I mentioned earlier, our state initiative is mental health awareness. So we've added a new position to our CAS board, the Mental Health Affairs Coordinator, which is Declan Woodman from Notre Dame, to have a designated person to work on spreading awareness and maintaining our initiative. We also have some exciting news. We will be hosting a spring convention at Woodland Regional High School in March this year, and we'll be giving you a sneak peek at the end, so get excited for that. The theme will be Unlocking the Keys to Leadership. The day will be filled with workshops, engaging activities, team building, and fun games. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, I'm going to throw it over to Abby.
Thank you, Emily. I am Abby Messina, CAS-CIAC's Service Project Coordinator, and this year we'll be running a full year service project. So Caring for Connecticut, Caring for Connecticut is our project this year, and our goal is to make 3,000 blankets by our March convention. Every month, about 3,000 babies are born in Connecticut hospitals, so our goal is to make a blanket for everyone. Blankets will be going to hospitals all around Connecticut, and they'll go to infants, babies, and children. After the symposium, all advisors will be receiving an email with a pledge form and a video tutorial on how to make the blankets. They can be made using only fabric and scissors, and they do not take long to put together. If your council stays after school one day for about an hour, you should be able to make a ton of blankets. I will be also sending advisors a couple suggestions for blanket making events in case anyone needs any inspiration. And not all hospitals are taking blankets for infants right now, so there will be more information on the distribution of completed blankets after the symposium. Our goal is also to have local councils give blankets to local hospitals, and I'll be sending emails every month or so just to track the progress of the initiative. We will also have some additional monthly projects such as friendship bracelet making projects for children in hospitals and an appreciation card project for frontline health workers. I am looking forward to working with all of you this year. And before I pass it over to Julia and Aaron, does anyone have any questions? Okay, it looks like there's one. Do the blankets require sewing to make? So no, actually what we're gonna be doing, you just use scissors and you make little cuts around the edges of blankets, and then you're able to just make a little knot. I'm gonna be putting together a video to send to all advisors with the pledge form. So yeah, no, there's no sewing involved. When will the friendship? So those will be running in like miscellaneous months of the year. So I believe we're looking at maybe doing one in December and maybe one in November. Okay, so I think that those are all the questions. So I will pass it over to Julia and Aaron. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Erin, and today I'm going to be presenting the 5 leadership awards for the 2021 and 2022 school year. The first one that we will be presenting today is the Top 10 Project Award. The Top 10 Project Award recognizes student councils and governments across Connecticut that have established a group of projects to better themselves, their community, and other communities. If your council is nominated and placed as a Top 10 project, your council will be invited to present at our spring convention. You'll receive recognition for your project. Submissions for this award will include a simple application, a description of your project, and a 300-word essay about why your project should be considered for the award. The second award we are pleased to announce is the CAS Council of Excellence Award. It has been designated to recognize and reward the achievements of our outstanding student councils or student governments in our state association. To be eligible, your school must provide information related to your council operations, fundraising, communications, service learning, etc. Look out for more application information to come. Individual student leadership contributions at the state level will be recognized this year through the Dale Hawley Award. Dale D. Hawley's life was dedicated to youth, service, and the development of student leaders as a principal and director of the National Association of Student Councils. This award is given based on nominations. If you know someone who exemplifies these values, be sure to nominate them for this award. The Ron Nadevich Advisor of the Year Award. This award is given in memory of the former Executive Director of Student Councils. Mr. Nadevich recognized the importance of leadership, education, and development for all students. This award is to be given to one outstanding advisor and will recognize the many contributions that advisors have made all over the state. A subcommittee designated by the Council, Connecticut Student Activities Conference will review applications and determine the recipient. The final one we will be presenting today is the District Project Award. This one is brand new for this school year. It was created to further foster collaboration among the districts. This award centers around district collaboration on projects related to service. It will function on 2 levels. The first level will be a competition against schools within districts to choose a service project idea. The winning school will be representative of the districts on the next level, where districts will compete to win the District Project Award title. Districts must work together to complete this project and should show proof. The winning district project and overall winning district will receive recognition. Once the symposium is over, we'll send more information about this award and amazing opportunity. Does anyone have any questions about the state awards program this year? We have one question. For the Outstanding Council Award, can all members of a student council be involved in the application process? Yes, I believe so. Does anyone have any other questions? How do we nominate someone for an award? There is a piece of paper that I can send out to all the councils once the symposium is over. I don't have it on hand right now. Where can this information be found outside of the symposium? We have it all collected in a drive, and we will work towards sending that to the councils. Anything else? And we will also be posting it on social media. All right, that looks like all the questions.
Hi everyone, I'm Lexi and I'm this year's CAS historian, archivist. I'm so excited to share with everyone our logo contest for this year. You will all have the opportunity to show your CAS pride by designing the state spirit logo for the 2021 to 2022 school year to be used in a variety of mediums. Our CAS branding committee has spent time creating the guidelines for this competition. The design must have a reference to Connecticut and must also incorporate the phrase CAS or Connecticut Association of Student Council. The logo should also include the school year. We want to stress that the logo cannot violate copyright laws or include any watermark logos, quotes, or images. It also does not matter if the design is computer generated or hand-drawn. This design must fit on t-shirts, pins, flyers, and social media platforms. If you're interested in submitting, you must submit it digitally with your name, school, advisor, and a brief description of the logo. The winner of the logo contest will be voted on at the 2022 Adventures in Leadership Spring Contest. We hope that you consider sending in your designs. Lastly, I just want to discuss the social media plan for this year. The social media pages are in the middle of being revamped. We want to bring a new life to the accounts. This year, we will be adding more student contributions to the platform. For example, we will be posting short videos introducing the executive board. Social media will also be one of the main ways of notifying students, parents, and advisors about upcoming events. You can find us at CT Suco on Instagram and Twitter. You will also be able to find the logo contest guidelines on our social media platforms. Does anyone have any questions? So we have a few questions. Are there any colors we look for in design? Is everyone eligible to vote for logos? So this year, we actually, for colors, we didn't set in stone any colors. We want to leave it up to you to see what you come up with. Traditionally, we do more blues and whites, but we are open to anything this year. And everyone is eligible to vote for those logos at the conference. Like I mentioned, when we're voting at the 2022 Adventures in Leadership Spring Contest. Is there a CAS signature color palette? So like I said before, we usually use blue or white, but we're open to any colors this year. And does each school or district submit one logo? No, individual students will be submitting the logo, so you can have as many submissions from one school as you would like. Do you have any recommendations for programs to design the logo? So there's always Adobe that we use. Any program that you have that's available to you, like Lucid Press is a great one to use. We use that at Woodland and we love it. Can one person submit multiple designs? We're limiting it to one design per person. Our computer generated logos preferred. We really have no preference. It's all about the design, and we'll see it at the conference. And the current logo we have is, it's just the traditional logo on the top. I'm trying to pull up a picture. We don't have a picture on hand. We're pulling up a picture right now. Yeah, we're gonna present it just so you could see an example of what we've had for a while.
Never mind, we are not allowed.
Oh, never mind.
Oh.
So we actually can't present because we are already presenting, the advisor's already presenting. So basically the current logo has the shape of Connecticut in the middle, and then it's like a globe, and it says Connecticut Association of Student Councils. So as long as you have those key phrases in the logo, that is acceptable. And then our virtual submissions required. What about hand-drawn logos? Oh, Emily just sent in the chat the logo. So virtual submissions are what we are taking, but if you have a hand-drawn logo, there is a way to send it to us. We can send it to us just by mailing. What type of file should the logo be in if it's digital? PNG or JPEG? We usually take PNG. That's the one that we're looking for this year. This all is going to be on our social media as well. And the details of the logo contest specifically are going to be on our social media platforms. We have a flyer going out in a few days, so keep a lookout for that. Just a reminder that our Twitter and Instagram are CT Stuco, so everyone make sure that you're following that for more information on the logo, and also to see more information about upcoming CAS-CIAC events and more about your executive board this year. Does anyone have any more questions? Oh, and here's the logo. Thank you, Mr. Tomlin. So that's just an example of what you could do. This year, we're looking for something more colorful, and just a reminder that it's going to be on a variety of different mediums, so it needs to be able to fit on a pin and a t-shirt. Does anyone have any more questions? Okay, if that's it, then I'm going to pass it over to Yasmin.
Hi guys, I'm currently sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Okay, so today I'm just going to be talking to you guys a bit about legislative awareness, and so the three main things I want to talk about are how a bill becomes a law, some important pieces of legislation that are going to be affecting us as students in Connecticut, and then I also want to take a chance to hear your voices and the changes you guys want to see within our state. So a proposed bill is sent to the standing committee of the General Assembly that best fits the subject matter. So for example, the Education Committee is typically what is affecting us, but other committees involve like public health and things like that. Next, the committee can do one of four things. They could have the bill drafted in legal language, they could combine it with other bills, they could refer the bill to another committee that they think will fit it better. So like I said, you know, education, they might say, oh no, maybe this falls better under health. Or they could let the bill fail, which to do so, you simply take no action. In the case that the bill doesn't fail and one of those first three outcomes happen, it's sent to the Legislative Commissioner's office. And what happens there is they ensure that the bill is constitutional. In the case that it is constitutional, you can then vote on the bill, which three things can happen. The first is that the bill isn't passed because not enough people support it, or the bill is sent to another committee because later on they can realize that the bill isn't best fit for the committee that is voting on it. Or the bill can be passed and enough members vote yes for it to go on to the next step. And the next step, they debate and discuss amendments. So bills without amendments go straight to the governor. But if they don't, if there are amendments and things that need to be debated, they're discussed between the House and Senate chambers. If the House and Senate are still not agreeing, then it's sent to a joint conference committee. And if the chambers still reject it, even with the help of the joint conference committee, that bill has failed. If they are able to agree, whether that is with or without the joint conference committee, the governor can do one of three things. The governor can sign the bill, veto it, which means you simply say no and throw it out, or take no action at all, which kind of has a similar effect as vetoing, and the bill will still fail. In the case that the bill is signed, it becomes a law. So some legislation that is affecting us as students, these are bills that have been proposed, not passed, but they are definitely being discussed within our General Assembly. So a big hot topic is starting high school later. A lot of bills regard performing studies to see the scientific benefits of doing so. And other states have even looked into switching elementary and high school start times because the science behind it is that teens get sleepy later. So they would do better starting later than elementary schoolers and adults. Next, there are a lot of bills regarding mental health and a lot of things regarding awareness. So they want to make sure students are aware of how to handle mental health and that students are aware of the resources available to them, because oftentimes the resources are out there, but we as students don't know about them and therefore can't take advantage of them. The third thing, of course, COVID has been discussed a lot, and they want to use remote learning to count as makeup days, some of our legislators, and so they definitely have been discussing that, especially, with snow days coming around. That should be interesting. They're addressing opportunity gaps, especially in low-income communities that have been widened. The gaps have gotten bigger because of COVID. They're also discussing learning loss in public education, which we've all experienced because it's definitely become harder for students to learn. They want to address how are we going to compensate for those concepts that we lost and didn't learn last year. So something I wanted to ask you guys is the laws you want to see implemented or changed here in Connecticut. And it could be something super simple or a complete major change. And as Emily mentioned earlier, we were talking about extending lunch times, the minimum required time, because currently it's something in like the early 20 minutes, but we want to get that closer to what you have in a typical 9-to-5 job, especially since students have extracurriculars and sports to attend after school. So that's just one example. So I want to hear from you guys what else you want to see changed. Okay, so Kaylee Budnick asks if the General Assembly is in session now. It is not, but it will be as of February. So that's why it's hard to see a lot of significant changes right now. Hopefully eventually we will see these bills get voted on. When I say opportunity gaps, Caroline, I'm referring to like lower income students tend to be more affected by COVID than, private school students and things of that sort. So they want to address how they can make sure everyone has closer to an equal opportunity to returning to normal and compensating for what learning was lost throughout COVID. Okay, Ethan definitely wants to see high school and elementary school start times switched. Yeah, that's a bill that we haven't seen proposed to switch the times. We've seen pushing it, but I think switching that would definitely be interesting. So we could write legislation on that and, see these changes possibly implemented. Mr. Tomlin, do you want to put us into breakout rooms to discuss the legislation you want to see? And at the end, we could come back and talk about how we can draft legislation and make that happen. So within your rooms, we're going to ask that you each come up with at least one idea for a law that you want to see either changed or a new law you want to see made or implemented within our schools, or just anything that expects us as high schoolers in general, even if it's not directly within our schools.
Okay, everyone, I hope you were all able to come up with at least one idea for a law you want to see implemented or changed. So does someone want to start us off and share what their group came up with?
I can start the discussion. Does somebody else want to?
Kelly could go.
Okay. So one thing that my group discussed is equity in the amount of times that students take the SAT for free. We were talking about how lower income communities tend to be impacted more by people only being able to take the SAT for free once, or it not being accessible to them, or them having to pay and things like that. So we'd like to see everybody be able to take it as many times as they want for free across the board. We also talked about the free breakfast and lunch program going on right now because of COVID, because a lot of us had really seen a positive impact in our schools, and just everyone being able to go to the cafeteria and not really abusing it, just getting a breakfast, little thing to eat, and it helps power their day.
I love that. And I feel like, especially if so many legislators are discussing how to address the opportunity gaps caused by COVID, addressing things like the SAT and lunches would be a great way to taking that step. Does someone else want to share out?
We can go next. Something that our group discussed was waiving the requirement for physical education credits for those that participate in either after school sports or sports outside of school. A lot of athletes have to still participate, well, all athletes still have to participate in their gym classes, and that can kind of be, whereas their sports would have fulfilled like the amount of physical activity they needed, and they still have a health class requirement, so any of the knowledge about fitness in life could be learned in the health classes. And we also discussed about students who play sports outside of school, and we thought that their coaches could sign off that they've met the requirement for the number of for the hours of physical activity, so that they would also be included in that exemption.
That's a great idea. And I feel like so many students have trouble fitting all the classes they want to take into their schedules, and just having that extra free credit would be really helpful to student athletes. Do we want to get one more person to share?
Yeah, I'll share for what my group talked about. So my group talked about, as you saw in the chat, the fact that I wanted to see that high school times and elementary school times were either switched, or at least that high school times were pushed back, because it's natural that teenagers, and like as you get into high school, they're going to bed at like 11, 12, 1 a lot of times because they have a bigger workload. So they have more work that they're staying up later to get done. Whereas elementary schoolers are going to bed at like 8 o'clock. So they're already getting a lot of sleep. So it would make sense that they would get up earlier, and that the high schoolers that are staying up later would sleep in a little bit to get the sleep they need so that they could perform well in school.
Yeah, I definitely want to see that change too. And it's more than just like, of course you mentioned students have more activities when they're in high school, but also science proves it so much. The studies show that like the chemical that regulates our sleep cycle doesn't form until later in teens, like not until 11 or 1. So we really don't get sleepy until then. So our brains shouldn't be starting anytime before 8 a.m. is what most scientists recommend. And most schools definitely start before then. And on top of getting ready, that definitely takes time. So, the science and just the facts about the way our school works all backs that up. So that's definitely something we should be advocating for on a state level. And now I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to be talking about our different districts within CAS-CIAC.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. So I've heard that I've been signed in as Emily Laput, but that's not my name. My name is Matt Krantz, and I'm the Eastern District Vice President. In general, CAS-CIAC districts operate much like they do at the state level, but on a smaller and more localized scale. So projects within the districts are mostly based on themes and projects taking place at the state level. Districts in action echo the state in action, as we will be doing projects that directly contribute or relate to the state project. Sometimes districts will work independently, and at other times they will work cooperatively. And there may even be a few friendly competitions to show off your district's dedication and spirit. For example, if there is a statewide blanket drive, each district may hold an independent drive for themselves that would contribute to the overall state count, but be competitive relative to other districts. They might also choose to donate the blankets to a hospital within the district. For example, Eastern has Bacchus Hospital, Central has Hartford or St. Francis, and Western has Yale New Haven. District conferences. This year, the vice presidents have been discussing district conferences related to the topic of the art of compromise, because we feel that this is a practical and relevant topic that is not talked about, taught, or practiced enough. Our plans include creating activities and stations where participants are exposed to different situations where the only way to accomplish the end result is to compromise. We're also contacting keynote speakers, including several politicians and people in prominent positions who will be able to explain and relate the art of negotiating and compromise back to real world applications of such skills in the professional environment. Specifics on dates and keynote speakers are to be announced at a later date. Are there any questions based on districts that I can take? So there's actually a list of districts that we have in the CAS-CIAC drive. It's by school and by region, so I can't list everyone off the top of my head, but we can send those out. In what ways might compromise be used in our futures, like office jobs and daily life? And the answer is all the time. There are always decisions that require cooperation and communication with other people. And sometimes the answer isn't your answer or the other person's answer, but lies in between. And it's not even in the professional world, but I'm sure most of us have siblings where the only way to get what we want and they get what they want is to find some negotiation in the middle. Are there any other questions that I can take? Okay, I'm not seeing any coming in. So with that, do we have Declan with us?
Yes, thank you, Matt.
All right, thank you, Declan.
All right, so let me share my screen. Hi, everyone. I'm Declan Woodman. I am the Mental Health Affairs Coordinator for CAS-CIAC, and I am a junior at Notre Dame West Haven. I will be covering two things today. We will be going through a meditation mindfulness activity, and I will also be presenting the mental health initiatives for CAS-CIAC for this school year. So moving straight into it. What is meditation? Meditation is an approach to training your mind through relaxation, focus, and awareness. It's similar to what exercise is to the body. And there's a variety of types of meditation, but I'll focus on a particular one that's popular called mindfulness meditation. In this type of activity, to give you some context, it's where you're purposely filling your mind with something, whether that be you focusing on your breathing, an image, a phrase. And the purpose of this kind of activity is to replace kind of stressful thoughts and anxiety with more positive ones. So like if you're stressed about a big test or you have some game or tournament coming up, you may begin to feel like those thoughts are overrunning your mind. And this kind of activity will help to lessen that sort of stress. And it's not going to make the thoughts disappear. Thoughts are thoughts, but it can help you to control them. Now that leads me into the next point about why do we meditate? So already mentioning less stress, there's also, it helped improve your focus and concentration, improving self-esteem, like helping your confidence, and it also helps to balance your immune system. So it is, I see there's a chat. And then moving into how do we do it? Well, there's not really a right or wrong way to do it, but you definitely need a quiet place to sit. So wherever you are right now, if you're in a bigger area, try and separate and move out, because in a minute, I'm going to be doing the meditation activity. And just a side note, you can do meditation for like 2 minutes or 2 hours. It's just however much time you have. But what's more important than the time is having 100% of your focus on the activity and doing it regularly. And just also to mention that there are a variety of resources on YouTube. There's also apps and free apps like Smiling Mind and Insight Timer. Now, moving into the activity, please join me in this brief meditation that can be used for the purpose of recentering yourself. We all ready? Okay, so close your eyes and allow yourself to be still. Start breathing deeply in through the nose and out through the mouth. Don't worry about how loud your breathing is or if anyone can hear it. And there's no need to try and ignore any noise or distractions around you or to try too hard to clear your mind. Imagine yourself as a rock in the middle of a stream. All the noise and commotion that may or may not be around you does not have any effect on you. It just washes away, passes by. Moving back, focusing on that breath. Think about anything causing you stress. With each breath out, you're going to imagine those unnecessary stresses you feel easing away, like they're melting off of you, like your mind and body feel lighter afterwards. And after doing so a few times, breathe in, observe how you feel, and breathe out. And continue this process for about 30 seconds. And I'll continue with the next part. Now that you're still breathing deeply, take a minute to visualize how you want the rest of your day to go. Imagine goals or successes you have in mind and how it'll make you feel to achieve them. Create that kind of mental picture and quickly go through and visualize it, playing it out. When you're ready, open your eyes and enjoy the new calmness and serenity felt from this activity. Okay, well, I hope everyone enjoyed that mindfulness activity. And now I'll be transitioning into CAS mental health initiatives. So by November 1st, I plan to develop a 10-question mental health survey to be sent to all high school students in CT whose email addresses are in the CAS database. And the purpose is establishing the need for mental health education as well as making mental health people more aware of it, and then seeing where resources are necessary. And by collecting the data in the survey, I can see kind of where there's a lack of awareness, where I need to fill in gaps, and what additional resources are necessary. And then in April, after about 6 months go by, and I start implementing some of those changes, I'll perform a follow-up survey. And just to kind of remind why it's important, because obviously we all struggle with stress and anxiety, but I wanted to let you guys know that this is important to me, because even if I don't understand exactly what you're going through, I can empathize with it. And I want to help you take whatever steps are necessary to help you improve that mental health, such as through meditation. Like when I started doing this activity last night, it definitely made me feel more relaxed. And I know that sometimes we may experience unpleasant feelings and not know how to internalize or process them, or you feel less alone. And I want to help you to not have so many of those feelings through providing more resources and making people and things more accessible. Well, now that I've done that, I will stop share and check the chat. Let's see. What would be your next step if you find an area with a need for better mental health education? So I would probably, like I said before, start that kind of a survey, see exactly, trying to more pinpoint where there's a lack of resources. Is it in like people needing to talk to an advisor? Like at Notre Dame, we have TA, which is where we have an advisor, kind of like a homeroom, but they're much closer to you and they really want to see how you're doing, how you're feeling. We also have guidance counselors, just people you can kind of talk to and feel comfortable with. So if there's also a better need for mental health education, I have in the past composed flyers that can be done as in a like a 10-minute assembly type format, or just like what we could do at Notre Dame is presented during TA to help kind of highlight the things that should be made aware in mental health without being too long and drawn out and people just losing interest. Can you make the survey available to advisors to send out to our school? Okay, I can definitely make that available to advisors. And is there a specific group that you feel might need more education or resources? I would say underrepresented populations and possibly lower income or who don't have as many resources or opportunities would definitely be the kinds of people who may not be as informed in mental health and who may need a little more assistance. How do you plan to maintain student faculty interest in mental health awareness? Maybe like you could put like do once every couple weeks or once every week you post like let's say on the CAS Instagram or wherever a new quote about like serenity and mindfulness. I know there's a teacher here at Notre Dame, Mr. DiCaprio, who is all about that kind of stuff. And I think it's helped students to become more calm. Let's see. Why do you feel more mental health awareness is necessary? I feel it's necessary because I personally have struggled with mental health, and I realized that therapy has been very helpful. And I know that if I struggle with it, it's probably likely that other students have struggled with it. And I've also over the summer, before CAS meetings, looked up facts and data to see exactly what kinds of stuff students are struggling with. And I saw that like there's a lot of problems with drugs, alcohol, and that's probably caused by feelings of depression, anxiety, whatever students or high schoolers or whomever is struggling with, and they're having trouble coping with it. Let's see if there's any other questions. And that's it. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the mindfulness activity. You enjoyed the Q&A as well as the plans I have for this year. Thank you so much.
All right. That was an awesome presentation, Declan. I feel so relaxed after that meditation. You have no idea. That's exactly what I needed. So I bet a lot of other student leaders needed that too. I just wanted to open this up because we've been throwing a lot of information at you guys about what we're doing and how you can get involved. We're just open into our next section. Chat in the evolution that we have. Okay, talking. You're fine. Just keep talking.
Sorry, is someone talking right now?
No, you're all good. You're all good.
Okay. What are some examples of workshops might be at the convention? So some examples of workshops that we have at the conventions tend to be at least one with our state initiative, which is mental health. So another activity like what Declan has. In other workshops would be just leadership focused, building a strong community, fostering equality, volunteering, service, all the different kinds of leaders, and also just how to run a government in general or how to run a project. We also have collaborative workshops, just like idea swaps. Other one is
What level of commitment is involved as a member of CAS-CIAC? So we meet about once to twice a month for about 1.5 to 2 hours. And we're going to soon enough be extending it to be long meetings that are about full day meetings every 3 or 4 months at our Cheshire offices. And also we get involved in a lot of different statewide conventions and conferences. As you can see, this is a statewide symposium, and we like to go to the national conference that's countrywide. How many schools have attended conventions in the past? We've had 17 schools attend conventions in the past. We would love to see more because we love to meet all the amazing student leaders around Connecticut. Do you have any ideas for guest speakers for the spring convention? We would love to hear if you guys know of anybody. We want to provide you with a positive experience and give you things that you care about. We are considering doing a doctor to speak. We love any student leaders or with issues that students care about. Will there be a national convention this year? If so, where? Yes. We have the National Student Council Conference. It will be virtual this year, unfortunately. It is a lower price for registration though, which is a plus because usually for traveling, it is about like $500 to go. Even more than, because then you also have transportation costs. This is nice, so it brings it to your house, the comfort of your home. And it will be on June 22nd to 25th. Any other questions? Why did my voice go like that? Oh, I'm muted. There are no other questions. We're going to do a Kahoot screen. So if you could join the Kahoot, it'll be really fun. Okay. Do I keep your microphone? Yes, please. Okay. Yeah, I know Jonathan's excited for the Kahoot. Who doesn't love Kahoots? This is CAS-CIAC history, state history. Oh, starting today, you're gonna do a whole team? Oh, I like that. Cool. Who will win? And 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Oh. Oh, I am unmuted. Oh, okay. I was like, what did they hear all our conversation? I know. This is a hard one. All my history buffs out there. Let's see. Oh. Ooh, Charlie just booted Abby out of first place. Nine. That was unlimited, 21 people. Ooh, that's hard. Florence Nightingale. I think Gavin made this. I did. You did. Yes. The lady with the lamp. She actually was a night nurse during the Revolutionary War, I believe, if I'm not wrong. That was right, yeah. "169 Towns" is actually a competition that the local news, Declan's in the lead, Abby's climbing, so is Lexi and Mrs. L. But there's actually a competition that the state news is doing for 169 towns in Connecticut to honor a charity in each town. It's 27 or 29. Yeah. Guys, I can hear you. 29. Ooh, people actually did pretty well on that one. Mrs. L just went to second place. That was a big jump. John just climbed. If you guys don't get this, I'm going to be very sad. Democracy. Whoever's the delegate of, ooh. Authoritarian, that's a dictatorship, guys. Okay, I'm gonna do 3 more questions. It's like 20 seconds. All right, 27 years. I actually did a presentation when I was in elementary school about him. Caroline's a climber, Declan and Matt in the lead.
Yeah, Caroline.
We're gonna get to question 10, but what's the original name of CAS-CIAC? Could have the acronym CAS, could not. Who knows? All right, Connecticut Federation of Student Councils. And this is our last question. This is for all the marbles. Who's gonna win?
Let me think.
For those geography people, don't you dare look up Google Maps.
Wait, people should not have to go on Google Maps for this.
I do. I don't know. I swear I don't.
No way.
Massachusetts. And the final winners are Declan, first place. Woo, woo, woo. Matt Krantz in second. Mrs. L, third. And some honorable mentions, Lexi and Abby. Excellent work, guys. And we're now going to move over to our lovely speaker. And it is my pleasure to introduce the newest part of the Presidential Symposium, the guest speaker. Each year, we will bring in a new and exciting speaker, and after their presentation will be an opportunity for some Q&As. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker in the series, Miss Bayan Galal. Bayan Galal is a 19-year-old Egyptian American born and raised in Connecticut. She is a junior at Yale University, where she is a double majoring in molecular biology and global affairs and minoring in global health studies. She's also currently serving as Yale's student body president and was the first Muslim elected to the role in Yale's 320-year history, truly making her mark on the world. Bayan is interested in pursuing the intersection between healthcare access and international development, particularly in the Middle East and Africa. She has pursued her interest in healthcare accessibility as an intern for the Council on Foreign Relations and Save the Children, a volunteer EMT, and a research assistant with both the Yale School of Medicine and Yale School of Public Health. In the future, Bayan hopes to pursue an MD/MPH and go on to practice medicine clinically and pursue healthcare policy work. Without further ado, here's the lovely Bayan Galal.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. So happy to be here today and excited to see so many faces. I hope that so far your conference has been off to a great start. So as Emily mentioned, my name is Bayan Galal. I am a junior at Yale University, and I am currently serving as the student body president. And as Emily mentioned, I am the first Muslim and first Arab student body president in Yale's history. And today, as you all are gathering to discuss leadership, what it means, what it entails, and specifically the challenges of leadership in 2021, I want to actually take a moment to talk about what the opportunities in leadership are. I think that we all know very well what the challenges in leadership are. I personally can attest to a lot of the difficulties that have come across by taking on a role, through so many different factors. First, taking on a role in the midst of a pandemic, taking on the role when you're the first to do it, taking on the role when you're serving a large number of students. I think all of us, no matter what school we're in, no matter what position we're serving in, can attest to the fact that being a leader, serving in student government is not an easy role. And even though it's something that we enjoy, it also is something that comes with a lot of challenges as well. And so we know the challenges, but today I want to talk to you about the opportunities instead, because I think that leadership and pursuing student government in particular is a really beautiful way to pursue these opportunities. And if we do that, we can lessen some of the challenges that come across and do our part in really moving forward. So I want to talk today about three main opportunities that I see in leadership. And I think these are tied to the challenges that we see. I think these are tied to some of the main challenges that have come up in the past year, but particularly looking at how we turn those challenges into opportunities and how we can use those to better ourselves, better the people that we're surrounded by, better our organizations, and better ourselves as leaders. And so the first of these three lessons that I really want to talk about is the opportunity to bring your interests and manifest them through leadership and through, in the case of you all, student government. And to talk about this, I'm going to give a little bit of background about my experience in student government. So I am a pre-med student, and I'm majoring in molecular biology and global affairs. So when you initially hear what my interests are, when you hear that I want to go to medical school, when you hear that I'm a STEM major, it might sound a bit odd that I am in student government, that I'm taking on a big role and spending a crazy amount of hours every single week investing my time into student government. So I want to give a bit of the background of how I initially got involved. And really the way I got involved is because I'm interested in healthcare, which makes sense since I'm pre-med, but particularly in healthcare policy. How do we work on policies that can impact the healthcare that people receive? And so when I got to Yale, I wanted the opportunity to work on policies that could let me know more about, how do we take part in policies that can better the experience for more people? And so the way that I initially got involved was through the Yale College Council, which is abbreviated to YCC, and that's our student government here at Yale. And through this, I really started out just by taking on the projects and opportunities that were most exciting to me. I did not consider a specific trajectory. I did not limit myself to certain projects. My guiding force through all of it was really, what am I passionate about? What am I excited about? What do I hope to pursue? And usually the answers to that were things related to healthcare at Yale, things related to cultural and religious accommodations. These were some of the main topics that were interesting to me and that I decided that I wanted to pursue in student government. And so I did that throughout my first year and explored a lot of different projects. And by my second year, I wanted to take on a bigger role in student government. And so I applied to the executive board. And on the executive board at Yale, there are these positions called policy directors. And policy directors basically take on a specific role and work on policy related to a specific issue. So I, quite fittingly, applied to be the health policy director. And in this role, I was now really able to focus in on policy that is related to my interests. And so I worked on things like getting PPE for all students. I worked on things like getting COVID testing reimbursements for all Yale students, projects that really had a big impact on the healthcare of students in the midst of the pandemic. And seeing the impact that I was able to have through this experience of specifically focusing on healthcare, focusing on what I was passionate about, what I felt my strengths were, was a really valuable experience. And so while I had not entered Yale intending to run for student body president, by the end of my sophomore year, by the end of taking on this role as health policy director, I felt that it was actually really critical that I do run for student body president, because I found how much pursuing my interests was exciting to me and how much of an impact I was able to have through that. And so because of that, kind of journey I took through it of really following what was exciting to me, what I was passionate about, I come now with a few main takeaways for you all. The first one is that whatever your interest is, know that you can manifest it and be a leader in that interest. It doesn't have to specifically be that you all want to go into politics. It doesn't have to be that you want to become lawyers or anything at all like that. I think the most critical part that should tie all of you together and that should tie your interests together is that you are willing to be a leader in whatever sense that means in what you're passionate about. And I think that when you pursue the things that you're most passionate about, that's when you're able to have the impact that you hope. That's when you're pursuing ideas, concepts, projects that are exciting to you and that you're willing to put in the time and dedication into planning and working on. And so for you all as students, I recommend that as you're taking on your various roles, make sure that you're thinking about what's exciting to you. I think it's important that we don't just take on student government for the sake of taking it on. It's important that we are manifesting our interests through it. And also for leaders, people in higher positions in organizations and in student governments, it's important that you use your students and use your members to the best of their abilities. If someone has a particular interest in my case, healthcare, but in some of your cases, if someone has a particular interest in organizing events for service projects, if someone has a particular interest in organizing events for certain holidays, I think that it's important that you channel that energy and you allow them to go forward in that direction where they're able to pursue what they're excited about. So I think that the responsibility falls on both ends. It falls on the member to know what they're excited about and to be willing to explore that and put their energy and time into that. And it also falls on the leaders in an organization to recognize what their members' strengths and interests are and to use those to the best of their ability and to make sure that they are giving them the opportunity to pursue the things that they are excited about. And so that's really how I see this first concept manifest. So that's the first one. The second big takeaway that I have taken from my experiences in student government, and particularly through these last 2 years at Yale, and what I really want to emphasize to you all from right now is the opportunity and more so the imperative to bring other voices into the fold as leaders. When we're talking about what some of the challenges that we are facing in 2021 is, I think that the challenges we're facing are absolutely not new. Particularly since the onset of the pandemic, we've seen increased attention to the Black Lives Matter movement. We've seen increased attention to what minority groups are being disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, by economic repercussions. And so I think that in that case, it's important that we consider how we can actually support students who are coming from different backgrounds and different perspectives. And so because of this, I think it's important that we consider when we are in a space of student government, when we are in a space of leadership, what voices are being brought to the fold? I think that's one of the most critical questions that we need to ask. And so before I delve into that, I want to give, again, a brief background touching on my experience, how I've seen this manifest, and then how I hope that you all will have it manifest in your lives and in your positions. So again, kind of giving the brief timeline. When I started in student government in high school in particular, I was one of the only students of color. And so I think that was a very important part of the start of my experience, in that recognizing that in places of leadership, I was oftentimes going to be the outlier, that I was going to look different, practice differently than other students. And so I think that that initial spark was definitely there in high school, where I had to navigate and learn what does it mean to be a minority in places where you're traditionally not there. What does it mean to establish your voice, to establish your presence, despite the difficulties that might be associated with it, and despite the fact that initially places haven't been made for you. And so I think that that spark was very much so in the beginning and informed a lot of my experience going forward. And so from there, when I started at Yale my first year, I was fortunate enough that when I got to Yale, the president of YCC, which again is Yale College Council, our student government, was actually the first Black student body president elected in Yale's history. And just take a moment to think about that, to reconcile with the fact that Yale University, one of the top institutions in the world that is typically said to be leading the way, only 2 years ago elected its first Black student body president. It's incredible that this happened, but also I think it's important that we always put into context when these things are happening and how long they've taken to happen. In my case in particular, however, this was a very exciting experience because seeing that a student of color was in this role, taking on this leadership position at such a large scale, I saw the impact that he was able to have. And I saw in particular the efforts that he put in to make sure that other students of color were also heard. And similarly, there was one other Muslim girl in YCC that year, and she really took me under her wing that year. I very distinctly remember that she guided me through the process of running in the election, of joining, different teams in the YCC, getting my footing. She was there to support me and guide me through this process. And so in particular, thanks to the two of them, I feel that I was able to get my footing and see that even in a place in an organization that might not initially be made for me, I can have a space and a presence here. So fast forward 2 years from there, and I'm elected as the first Muslim president. And now the roles are reversed. Whereas initially there were people who were there to build up this structure for me to make sure that my voice was heard as a minority, I am now taking on the imperative of making sure that I do the same thing for others. And it's happened in both direct and indirect ways. And so indirectly, I've seen how just by having someone who has a different voice, who looks different in the role, more students are willing to take that chance. Whereas there was only one other Muslim student in YCC last year, there are now 10 Muslim students running in the election this year. And that's a huge difference. And that's something that was indirect. It was a matter of people seeing someone who looks like them and knowing that they could take that chance. But I think that the direct changes were also important as well. As a Muslim woman who saw how important it was to have a Black student body president, to have other Muslim women supporting me in the YCC, I've now also made very direct efforts to make sure that other voices are brought into the fold and that we're particularly amplifying the voices of students of color, of minority students, and making sure that they are brought to the table. And so one example that immediately comes to mind for me is when I was appointing my executive board. And so applications for executive boards, any student at Yale could apply for any of the positions to the executive board. But as I went through the applications, I made sure to consider what voice does each person bring? How similar and dissimilar are each of these voices? And there was a strong imperative on me to consider that, to think about who is at the table already and who isn't, and take that into account and make sure that I was particularly amplifying the voices of students of colors. And I think that as leaders, we have to do that. If we fail to do that, then we're failing to have an organization that is actually working towards a collective good. We're failing to have an organization that is actually moving forward for everyone rather than those who are actually already at the table. And so that's how I've seen this manifested. And so for you all, I think it comes into two really important lessons. The first lesson is for, fellow minority students, and that is to take the chance, to find someone who might mentor you and to go forward and be willing to take the chance that even if it is not the case that someone has done it before, that you should still take that leap and go for it. And for students who are not of minority backgrounds, I think that the lesson and the imperative is equally, if not more important. And in this case, what I want to emphasize is the importance of making sure that the group you are surrounded by, making sure that the students in the fold are reflective of diverse voices. What backgrounds, locations, nationalities, religions, races, ethnicities are they coming from? I think as leaders, we have to ask that question. We have to be willing to question, who are we surrounded by? Who have we brought into the fold and who have we not? And I think that's incredibly an important part of it. So that is the second main takeaway. The last takeaway that I want to emphasize is really, reflecting on the importance of leadership in pursuit of service. I think that leadership alone lacks direction. I think we have to know, what are we working towards as leaders? And so in particular, I think the most valuable direction that we can go in, and what ties in my previous 2 points, is that we're going towards service to others. And so when we think about bringing in other voices, when we think about bringing our interests that we have, the most important way that we can manifest this is in service to others. And I think that the beautiful part about service is that it can manifest in so many different ways, big or small. And so when we are willing to kind of make that commitment, when we are willing to say that whatever role we're taking on, whatever we're doing, we're trying to serve others, we're trying to better the experience for people as a whole, then that is one of the best ways that we can move forward. And so I think this is something that's important that we guide ourselves with, because we have to have some type of guiding force, guiding energy of why are we doing this? Why are we pursuing this? And when it's the case that that is service and a genuine good faith effort to better the experiences of others, I think that can be one of the most impactful and rewarding aspects. So those are the 3 main kind of opportunities that I wanted to relay to you all about what leadership looks like, what student government looks like, and what it should look like going forward. Again, the first one is really taking a hold of what your interests are, what you value, and making those, central to your experience and to what you pursue. The second one is bringing into the fold the voices of other students, particularly students of color, and making sure that they are heard, making sure that they are brought to the table, and that you don't have an echo chamber, making sure that you are giving those students opportunities when they apply to your executive board, when they seek positions. I think all of those are critically important factors. And finally, being adamant in our pursuit of service to others and having that be the guiding force in all that we do and all that we take on in our leadership positions and in organizations like student government. So hopefully, I hope that these are 3 takeaways that will inform your experiences going forward. I know that leadership in student government is something that can be difficult to navigate. But I think that when we hold on to what are we working towards, what are we trying to achieve, what are we trying to improve, that's when we can best take these challenges that we've had and now turn them into opportunities for growth, for bettering ourselves, and for bettering the experiences of others around us. And ultimately, that should always be our goal. That should be the final destination. And I'm hopeful that all of you, by being here today, taking part in this conversation, will be able to go forward and move forward stronger with those goals and tenets in mind. So thank you very much.
Round of applause for you, Miss Galal. Miss Galal. Yeah, so well spoken. What a great message. I wanted to ask you some questions to help get to know you more and help you inspire other student leaders. So you've had a major impact on your school, and so I wanted, even though that's at a much larger scale, what do you believe is the #1 way we can make a difference as high school student leaders?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know sometimes it can be overwhelming to think about like, what is the scale that we're thinking about and things like that. And so I think as, a high school student leaders, one of the most important things that you all can take on is really thinking about what the impact that you can have is in terms of changing the status quo wherever you are. I think that leadership is not necessarily about making these big changes, these big projects, big events wherever you go. It's about changing the status quo wherever you are. And so if that means, that you're at a large scale and now you're going even bigger, organizing these big events, that's great. But also if you're at a small scale and you just want to start taking on more, then I think that's also equally valuable. So I think the most important thing that you all can do is assess, where are you at personally? Where's your student government at? Where's your school at? And what are some of the most important changes that you would like to see moving forward from there? And so for me, as I mentioned, being one of the only students of color in student government in high school, I felt that one of the things, whether it was then or going forward, that I wanted to see change was what the face of leadership looks like and how minority students are brought into the fold. And so I'm grateful that I've now been able to do that at Yale, but I think that it's equally important, if not more important, that early on, you all take that on as well, and that you all choose to bring in these voices and choose to look around and assess what needs to be changed and what needs to be improved. And when we all are willing to make those assessments at a small scale or large scale and challenge the status quo, be willing to go forward and make the changes we want to see, that can be one of the most impactful ways to do that.
Yeah, we had a question submitted from one of our vice presidents. He said, what is your advice to someone whose aspirations are biting off more than they can chew? How does one balance their pursuit of goals and their obligations while satisfying both?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And definitely something that I've had to grapple with a lot, in particular with YCC. I think that student government at the college level can be really insane. I probably put in around 30 hours a week into YCC. And so it's definitely something I've grappled with how do you kind of balance all of these different things that you want to pursue. And so I think that one of the most important messages I would have about like, what if your aspirations are biting off more than you can chew? I would answer this in two ways. The first one is, if this is meant in the sense of, is this aspiration too big? I would say never think that your aspirations are too big. Quite frankly, anything, it's a cliche, but when you do genuinely work towards something, you are able to pursue it. I think that no one, immediately thinks that they are going to accomplish something. If you told me when I walked into Yale that I would make history at the institution, I would have completely doubted you. But being willing to go forward and put in that effort is important, and being willing to accept that despite the odds or the possibilities, you should still pursue it is incredibly important. But on the side of like more logistically, how do you balance it? I think at that point, the important things to question are like, what do you value most and what are you willing to invest your time in? And I think at some point there is a critical distinction that has to be made in terms of, what interests do you want to emphasize and put an increased amount of time towards, and what ones will have to go on the back burner. This is definitely a decision that I ultimately had to make during my sophomore year, where I felt that because I loved YCC so much, I was going to have to take a step back in other student organizations. So I think being willing to make that distinction of what needs to stay and what needs to go, depending on what's most exciting and interesting to you, is a decision that people shouldn't be afraid to make.
Carrie Dench asked a question, what can students attending and leading a student body made of predominantly white students do to represent and include people of color in their initiatives when there is a lack of diverse voices in the school?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that I have a few different responses to that. First of all, I think it's incredibly important to whoever asked it, thank you for asking the question, because I think that like making that assessment in the beginning is a really important part about it. But in terms of what we do when there is a lack of diverse voices in their school, I think it's important that we recognize two things in particular. The first one is, even when there aren't a lot of diverse voices, there still are some. And I think that's the important critical distinction. As I touched on, in high school, there weren't a lot of diverse voices, but again, there were some, and I was one of those. And so I think that being willing to tap into the ones that are there is incredibly important. And so even when there aren't a lot, there will always be some. And I think being willing and being adamant about bringing those voices into the fold is an important part about that. And so I'm personally incredibly proud of my little sister, Yasmin, who's on the call, because she is one of those people now who is in a similar setting as me, where her voice isn't as common, where there aren't a lot of Muslim women, and yet she is kind of taking that on. And so I think that there is this importance of making sure that voices like hers and voices of other minority students are amplified and brought to the table and given opportunities to bring that forward. I think the other part of it is, when there is a lack of diverse voices, specifically within the context of your school, that doesn't mean that you can't, broaden your reach. And so if you can't find those voices within your own school, then it's important that you think about, how can we expand what this looks like? How can we maybe in particular bring speakers who are of different backgrounds and have them be kind of a recurring feature in student governments? How can we bring in students from maybe other schools if we want to do inter-school events and things like that? I think we can always expand the scope to make sure that we are bringing in those voices. And even if we don't expand the scope, there will always be those voices no matter what, whether they're a few or whether a lot, they are always there. And it's just about making sure that we are taking the time to recognize those voices and have them brought into the fold.
we're going to do one more question, and it's going to be from Charlie. How do you feel your interests and goals evolved and changed over time? How did government? Charlie, is it okay if I ask John's question? Okay, we have her permission to do John's question. How are you able to manage your time and accomplish so much? How are you able to find time to stay determined and do anything you put your mind to in terms of government and government roles?
Yeah, good question. Again, something that I've definitely had to grapple with a lot in terms of time management. And I think that there are a few, time management, and I think this question also touched on how do you stay determined. So I'm going to try to touch on both of these at once. But I think that there are a few central tenets. The first one is that I always know what I'm working towards. And I think that this has been incredibly important because whatever I took on, I knew what the long-term goal was. And even if it wasn't a specific goal of reaching a specific position or something like that, I knew conceptually what was the goal. So when I initially joined YCC, my long-term goal was never to become president. My long-term goal was to be in service to the Yale student body and to improve the experience of other students. And so I think that when I had that goal in mind, it made it easier when the workload did get heavy, when the time commitment did get really increased, for me to be willing to put in that time, for me to not only be willing, but to be excited to put in that effort. And I think that was an important distinction and also touches on what I was discussing earlier about making sure that you're tying in your interests. And so I think that making sure that you're adamant about what you're passionate about and knowing what your goals are and having those center your experience is an incredibly important part of that. And the second, important tenet that I would mention is having things that center you and ground you that you can always turn back to, and have as kind of on a more personal note, we discussed professionally, and academically, what you can do to think about what your long-term goals are and what you're passionate about. But then there's also the personal aspect of how do you center yourself? How do you have something that's rejuvenating and recharging? And so I think that there have been two main things for me, and these things differ for everyone, but just having those things is important. For me, two of the main ones, first is my religion. I think coming back to my faith, coming back to, touching on those experiences and coming back to what my religion tells me about going through hard times, about certain experiences, has been an important part of me, navigating more difficult times. And I think the second part would be having people to turn to. I'm blessed at Yale with incredible friends who supported me throughout my time in the YCC campaign and things like that, and also throughout other times. And so I think that having your people to center you as well is really valuable. So for me, my religion and my friends have been really centering components. But I think that for everyone, those variables can differ. It's just a matter of thinking about what are those factors that center you, that ground you, that you can turn to when you need, reassurance and composure. And then again, on the professional and academic sense, thinking, what are your long-term goals? What are you working towards? How much am I willing to commit and dedicate to make sure that I reach that position, that I, am ultimately able to attain that position? I think that's equally important as well.
Thank you, Ms. Galal, for coming. It was an honor to have you here, and we hope to see you soon, and we wish you the best of luck with your future endeavors.
Thank you for having me. Good luck, everyone.
We will now have opportunity for breakout groups.
Thank
We will
you.
do 5-minute breakout groups in 2 rounds. We're going to discuss this and discuss our answers to these questions, and then come together at the end of our 2 rounds.
Hello, everyone. So we are running into, Emily is just having a little bit of trouble with her computer right now, but thank you all so much for attending. And before we go, this is our final, our final little thing once it gets up and loading. So follow us on Instagram or Twitter. We are at CT Stuco on both. We post, and we will be posting more. We'll be giving school shout outs. So please just make sure, give us a follow, and you'll be able to get updates throughout the year for upcoming events, the progress of our projects, and just more news on officers and other CAS activities. Thank you so much for attending. We are not done quite yet. We are going to show the video, the promo video for our convention in March.
Yes. And this is the spring convention. It will be hosted here at Woodland. The theme is Unlock the Keys to Leadership. And it's just very quick. It's only 40 seconds, and we're going to watch a quick trailer preview.
Okay, I can present my screen. Okay, so thank you again so much, everyone, for attending and staying through and participating. And with that,
Hope everybody has an excellent day. It was so great to meet all of you, and I'll see you next time at our next CAS event.
thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.